At my parents' anniversary dinner, my sister gave a toast, thanking them for raising an only child. My mother lifted her glass, and my father beamed. So I stood up and said something that left the whole table stunned. I hadn't gone there with the intention of stirring up drama. If anything, I came hoping to make amends, to finally show them that I could rise above it all, be the mature one. The venue was exactly what you'd expect from a couple who once bickered about whether their dog deserved a middle name. Elegant, pristine, a touch too beige. The kind of place where the waitstaff speak in whispers, and the food isn't eaten so much as admired from a tasteful distance. I arrived 3 minutes ahead of schedule, but still somehow felt late. My sister, of course, was already holding court. Hair immaculately styled, makeup picture perfect, commanding attention like she was running for office or recruiting for a new age cult. She greeted me with an air kiss and that breathy, patronizing voice she saves for major holidays and formal gatherings. "You made it," she said, like she'd just spotted a vague acquaintance waiting at a bus stop. I smiled back, the kind of smile that feels like a paper cut. My mother gave me a stiff hug, my father offered a nod, the sort of nod you reserve for when you run into your mechanic in the cereal aisle. Naturally, I was seated at the very end of the table, tucked beside a ficus and directly across from my cousin's new boyfriend, who introduced himself twice and still managed to get my name wrong. But I didn't protest. No eye rolls, no sighs, no glancing at the clock, no scene. I kept reminding myself that I had a purpose for being there, that maybe, just maybe, if I extended this one gesture, things might finally shift. Not perfect, but at least polite, tolerable. Because I'd brought something with me, something that mattered, something thoughtful, something generous that I had carefully prepared over the past few months. The envelope was still tucked in my bag, its corners worn soft from being handled over and over again. It wasn't just a check, it was a message, a quiet, heartfelt way of saying, despite it all, I still want a connection. Dinner began. The room buzzed with idle chatter, like an old fluorescent bulb. My sister spoke at length about a conference she'd presented at, and my parents hung on every word as though she were reciting the Constitution. When I shared that I'd launched a new freelance project, my mother blinked and said, "That's nice. Do you get health benefits with that?" By the time the soup hit the table, I had responded to exactly 2 questions, neither one about me. Then came the toast. My sister stood, glass lifted, smile expertly dialed in. "I just want to say thank you to everyone here tonight," she began, "for coming to celebrate the 2 people who raised me into the woman I am today." Applause followed. I clapped too, like a trained seal on cue. "And especially," she went on, turning toward our parents with the same carefully curated warmth, "I want to thank them for raising the most amazing only child anyone could ever ask for." And then, nothing. I paused for a moment, waiting, hoping that someone might chuckle, that my mother would gasp and say, "Oh my God, don't forget your sister." Or that my father might cough, clear his throat, do anything to break the silence. But instead, my mother raised her glass, and my father smiled, the same smile he wears in posed Christmas photos. Not even a flicker in my direction. I could have burst into flames, and the only reaction I'd get is someone asking the waiter to refill the water. That's when the sound in my ears went quiet. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a dull stillness, like I'd finally accepted a joke everyone else had been laughing at for years. I stood up before I even realized I was moving. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, and walked calmly to the center of the room. No glass clinking, no preamble, just my voice, even and steady. "I had something prepared to give to the people who raised me," I said. "But I think there's been a misunderstanding." There was a ripple of confusion, heads turned. My sister's face went slack. My mother's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something, but couldn't quite find the tone that would make it charming. I turned toward the table in the back, where my aunt and uncle were seated, like second-string relatives who got the invite out of pity. They looked stunned. My aunt's hand fluttered too. Her chest. My uncle looked like he wasn't sure whether to stand or sink through the floor. I handed the envelope to them directly. No theatrics, no speeches, just a simple, "This is for you, then." I sat back down for a long moment. No one said anything. No forks clinked. No chairs shifted. It was the silence of a bomb that hadn't quite finished going off. My sister blinked like she was trying to reboot her brain. My mom tilted her head in that way she does when she's trying to convince herself she didn't just witness something deeply inconvenient. My dad's face was unreadable, but his jaw was clenched. And my aunt, he was staring at the envelope like it was ticking. I didn't say another word, and no one asked. The rest of the dinner passed in that strange, suffocating quiet, like the moment had sucked the air out of the room and no one was quite sure how to breathe again. But I breathed for the first time all night. I actually breathed because I wasn't waiting anymore, not for validation, not for permission, not to be seen. They'd raised an only child after all. So I gave what I had to someone who actually saw me. They say that when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. I used to think that was just a quote people slapped on Pinterest boards between photos of minimalist living rooms and avocado toast. But maybe Maya Angelou knew something I didn't, because my parents, they've been showing me who they are since I was old enough to understand what a golden child was, and more importantly, that I wasn't it. The signs were always there, subtle at first, like the way my sister's macaroni art made it to the fridge, while mine was quietly repurposed as a grocery list, or the way my parents clapped when she sang off-key in a school play but said nothing. When I won a regional writing competition, I brought home a little trophy. Once I still remember the way my dad glanced at it, then said, "You know, spelling bees don't count as sports." When I turned 8, I asked for a bike. My sister got a pink one with streamers, a matching helmet and training wheels. Just in case, I got a long lecture about how I should be happy with hand-me-downs. The hand-me-down was from a neighbor's kid. It still had mud on it. And yet I kept trying. I thought maybe if I was quieter, easier, more helpful, maybe that would earn me a little space, so I babysat, cleaned the kitchen without being asked, and brought home good grades, straight A's. Mostly my mom called them bare minimums. When my sister got a B+ in history, there was cake. When I graduated high school, my parents forgot to book the restaurant. They promised we ended up eating at a fast food place. Because as my dad put it, the fries are better anyway. My sister's graduation, they rented a private hall. There was a slideshow, speeches, even party favors with her name on them. You'd think she was giving a TED Talk, not picking up a diploma. But I didn't crack. I told myself I didn't need all that. That wasn't that kind of person that I was, fine, keeping my head down. I didn't realize that what I was actually doing was shrinking silently daily, and with practice, my aunt and uncle saw it first. They were never loud about it. They didn't swoop in and declare themselves my saviors. But they were there in all the small, quiet ways that matter. They used to babysit me when my parents wanted a break. I think I was 5 the first time they picked me up. My mom handed me off like I was a Tupperware container she'd grown tired of. She's picky about food, she said, and don't let her stay up too late. They didn't treat me like an inconvenience. They made popcorn and let me watch movies. I picked when I got scared during the never-ending story. My aunt held my hand and said, "He's just pretending to be scary." Sweetheart. That was the first time anyone explained fear to me in a way that made sense. I spilled orange juice on their white carpet once and burst into tears. I'd been yelled at for less at home. But my aunt just brought me a towel and said, "It's just a carpet. You're worth more than that." When I was sick in college and couldn't afford cold medicine, my uncle drove 2 hours with soup and cough drops. My dad sent a thumbs up emoji, no words, just the emoji my mom suggested. I tried herbal tea when I got my first job and was scared I wouldn't make it. My aunt emailed me every day for a week, just little things, "You've got this. They're lucky to have you, proud of you already." Meanwhile, my parents asked if it came with dental. They showed up for birthdays, for emergencies, for everything in between when I got out of a toxic relationship and had nowhere to go. They cleared the guest room without hesitation. My mom said I should have tried harder to make it work. When I landed my dream freelance client, I told them first. Not because I didn't want to tell my parents, but because by then I knew how the conversation would go and I was tired of shrinking. I tried once to explain all of this to my mom. I told her how much it had hurt growing up under the shadow of someone who never seemed to have to make an effort. She chuckled and said, "You've always been overly sensitive. That's your issue." Then she added, "Well, at least we didn't spoil you." And she was right. They hadn't. But neither had my aunt and uncle. What they had done was see me, listen to me, make space for me to exist without needing to earn it through performance. And in this family, that alone was revolutionary. There was this moment, just a few weeks ahead of the anniversary dinner, when I was sitting at their kitchen table sipping coffee and suddenly realized I felt more at home there than I ever had in the house where I was raised. My uncle was in the middle of some goofy story about setting off the smoke alarm trying to make pancakes. My aunt rolled her eyes at him, but couldn't wipe the smile from her face. They had that natural ease that only comes from loving someone without needing to change them. I half joked, half confessed, "I used to wish I was yours." My aunt looked at me over her mug and said, "But you are." That moment took up permanent residence in my chest. As I walked into the anniversary dinner, I didn't have a plan to speak. I didn't intend to do anything at all. Sure, the envelope was still in my bag, but in my mind, it was still meant for my parents. Some quiet part of me was holding on to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me. Instead, they erased me. Softly, publicly. And for the first time, I allowed myself to accept what I'd always known. I hadn't been unseen because I failed to shine. I was unseen because they refused to look. So I turned my gaze elsewhere, and what I'd been seeking all along, I found it. The envelope hadn't been opened. I knew because the following morning I received a text from my aunt. Just a single question mark. No words, no emoji. Just that small, curled symbol of confusion that somehow spoke volumes. I waited an hour before I returned the call. They answered on speakerphone. I could hear my aunt's breath before she spoke. "We haven't opened it." I smiled, though they couldn't see. "You can." My uncle cleared his throat. "Are you sure? We don't want to cross a line." "You're not," I said, leaning back on the couch and gazing at the ceiling. "You never have." They opened it together. I heard the rustle of paper, then stillness. No gasp, no exclamation. Just silence. A silence that made my chest feel weightless. I had transferred $50,000 into a joint account in both their names. No catch, no fine print, no clever legal tricks, just a quiet offering of repayment for all the gentle kindnesses they never once asked to be compensated for. And then came the whisper, "No, no, sweetheart. This can't be right." "It is," I replied. "You were planning to give this to them, weren't you?" I was. There was more silence. And then something gave way. Not like a dam collapsing, but like a thin pane of glass finally giving in after years of quiet strain. My aunt's voice shook. "But we didn't do anything to deserve this." "You didn't have to," I said. "You showed up. You loved me. You saw me. That was more than enough." Then my uncle spoke, his voice soft, almost sacred. "You don't know what this means to us." "I do," I said gently. "That's exactly why I did it." I assumed that would be it. A clean conclusion. A single act of clarity wrapped in quiet peace. But of course, that's not how things work in my family, because 5 hours later, my phone lit up with calls. The first one was from my mother. I didn't pick up. The second came with a voicemail. I played it on speaker while I folded laundry. "You made your point. This is some kind of stunt. It wasn't funny. Call me back." The third call came from my sister, that one. I definitely didn't answer. Then came the text, "Sister, was that real? Like the money you were actually going to give them that much? Why them? They didn't even raise you. You're being dramatic. You humiliated us." I didn't respond mostly because I was too busy laughing, the kind of laugh you only let out when something ridiculous finally folds under the weight of its own absurdity. By that evening, my dad had gotten involved. He doesn't usually text. He considers full sentences effeminate and emojis leftist propaganda. But I guess the situation called for a breaking protocol, Dad. "We need to talk face to face, not like this," which in dad speak translates roughly to, "I don't know how to spin this yet, but give me time." What followed was what I call the regroup phase. My parents closed ranks, spun the story, tried to contain the spread. I got messages from 2 cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Cousin 1, "Hey, I heard there was drama at the dinner." "You okay, cousin?" 2, "Oh, what did you say to Aunt Lorna?" "Mom's freaking out." Aunt Lorna. Of course, see, my parents didn't just stew quietly. They activated the family network like a political campaign. Suddenly, I was the unstable one, the emotional daughter, the attention seeker. But I didn't bite. I didn't explain. I didn't send my own version of events to the group chat. I just let them twist in their own silence. Then came the unannounced visit. It was mid-afternoon. 2 days after the dinner, I opened the door, and there they were, my parents, my mother, in her pressed blouse and pearl earrings, my father standing like he was about to ask me to step outside and look at his grill setup. I didn't say anything. I just leaned on the doorframe. "We'd like to come in," my mother said. "No." She blinked. My dad looked past me into the living room like I was hiding state secrets in the couch cushions. "You don't want to talk this through?" he asked. "You didn't seem interested in talking when you raised your glasses to your only child?" My mother exhaled sharply. "It was a joke." No one laughed. "We didn't mean it like that, didn't you?" I crossed my arms. "You had all night. You didn't say a word." He straightened. "You blindsided us. That's rich, coming from the people who cut me out with a smile." Dad spoke again. $50. Zerozen, that's not a joke. You were going to give that to us. I said, and you gave it to them instead. I didn't answer, as we both knew that money. My mom said, voice tightening, "Could have helped us retire early, pay off the car, your father's medical bills." "I know," I said. "That's why I saved it." He stared at me, unblinking. "So what changed?" I smiled, not kindly. "You toasted to your only child." She looked away. My dad clenched his jaw. "So this is revenge." "No," I said. "This is recognition. I gave my thanks to the people who earned it. You're throwing away your family." "I'm finally choosing one." They left after that. Not with a slam, but with a quiet door. Click that felt heavier than it should have. I thought it might stop there, but then my sister joined the offensive. She posted some vague, emotionally manipulative thing online, a photo of my parents' wedding photo. Captioned, "Some people only show up when they want applause. Real family shows up quietly." I didn't respond. I didn't need to, though. Next day I got a call from my aunt. "We've been getting messages," she said, sounding embarrassed, from your mom and your sister. "I figured they're trying to guilt us, saying we manipulated you. You didn't." "I know, I hate this. We didn't want to be in the middle. You're not," I said. "You're where you've always been beside me." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "We're not going to cash it, the money you are. We don't need it." "I know we can't accept it." "Yes, you can," I said, "because I need you to, because I can't go back in time and make things fair, but I can do this. I can say thank you properly." He sniffled. "You're going to make me cry." "Good." I was starting to feel like I was the only one that night. I sat on my porch with a glass of wine and looked at the stars. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel smug, felt sick, like something in me had been put back into place. The fallout wasn't over, but I wasn't afraid of it, because when the dust settled, they'd still be there, my aunt and uncle. The people who never asked for proof, who never needed a performance, who knew who I was, even when I was still trying to figure it out, and now they knew what they meant to me. Finally, I thought the silence would be the end of it. You know that moment after a storm when everything's eerily still, and you convince yourself it's over. That was me sitting in the quiet, thinking maybe, just maybe they'd let it go, that maybe my parents would take the loss and retreat into their own cold little bubble. But that's not how people like them operate. Quiet was never peace. It was a setup. It started with a phone call from my cousin Theo. Of all people, we hadn't spoken in years. He was the kind of relative who didn't bother remembering birthdays unless it showed up in his Facebook notifications. So when I saw his name pop up, I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. "Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Your mom's been saying some things about you, about the money. You might want to check your socials." I don't use Facebook much anymore, but I logged in. And there was a long, meandering post on my mother's page with just enough vagueness to give her deniability. But all the usual trademarks, spiritual quotes, passive-aggressive scripture, and just enough weaponized humility to make it look like she was the one bleeding. He never said my name, but she didn't have to. It breaks a parent's heart when their child is led astray by people pretending to love them. Family isn't about money, it's about loyalty. We did our best, and now we're being punished for it. Sometimes evil wears a smile. Beneath that, the comments piled up: church friends, old neighbors, acquaintances with too much time and too little information praying for your family. "You don't deserve this. You raised your daughters right, and my favorite people forget who carried them when they were helpless. One day they'll regret it." I almost laughed, but my hands were shaking too hard. Then came the real blow. My aunt called me shaken. She had gotten an anonymous email. No subject line, just screenshots of old text messages I'd sent years ago. Ones I'd sent in moments of frustration, complaining about them venting, being messy, saying things like, I wish they'd stop hovering, and sometimes I just want space. Things. I never meant as betrayal, just as noise, the kind you let out when you're human and tired and raw. The sender, my sister, she didn't sign it, of course, but she left enough breadcrumbs that it wasn't hard to figure out. I know you didn't mean it, my aunt said. But it hurt to see, and I believed. Her, not because she was guilt-tripping me, but because she was honest, because she told the truth, even when it was uncomfortable, unlike the rest of them. So I drove over. I sat at their kitchen table with a box of pastries and a pit in my stomach. I'm sorry, I said, for everything. I said for anything that made you question what you mean to me. My aunt didn't make a speech. She simply reached over and held my hand. My uncle poured coffee. No big declarations, no emotional embrace, just presence. This is what love looks like, the kind that doesn't require justification. That's when it finally clicked. It was time to stop forcing what had never worked, to stop trying to plug holes in a ship that had never been seaworthy, to stop calling it family, just because we happened to share DNA. So I wrote a letter, not an angry one, not a rant, just the truth. A list of boundaries, a calm, firm line drawn in the sand. Please don't contact me again. Do not try to reach me through others. Don't twist the story and don't expect reconciliation. I wish you peace, but I'm done playing the part you cast me in. I printed the letter and mailed it, so no one could claim I never saw it. A week later, my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. She began in tears and ended in venom. You've destroyed this family. You've broken your father's heart. Are you proud of yourself? And as I listened, I thought, yes, I am. But they didn't stop there. They tried to pressure my aunt and uncle into returning the money. They sent official letters, implied they were being manipulated, suggested I was unstable. It got so intense that my uncle consulted a lawyer just to ensure they were safe. I offered to cover the cost. He said no. We don't take from family, he said, but we will accept gifts. That winter, I spent the holidays with them. Just the three of us. No expectations, no performances. We cooked side by side, played cards, watched old movies in our pajamas, and laughed over nothing. My aunt gave me a scarf she'd knit by hand. My uncle made hot chocolate, burned it a little, and we drank it anyway. It was the best Christmas I had ever experienced. At one point, my aunt looked at me and asked, "Do you regret it?" I didn't even need to think. No, because I didn't just walk away from a family. I walked toward one. I stopped hoping to be noticed, and instead chose the people who already saw me. Eventually, the calls stopped. The noise died down. They moved on, found new people to perform for, fresh narratives to spin. I didn't. I remained in this small, quiet life where love isn't conditional and kindness doesn't come with strings attached. Sometimes I still think back to that dinner, to the look on my sister's face when I handed the envelope to someone else, to my mother's stunned expression, to the tension in my father's jaw. Those images used to haunt me. Now, they just remind me of the night I stopped apologizing for simply existing. The night I finally said enough and meant it. Sometimes I do still wonder if I handled it the right way. Not the part about giving the money to my aunt and uncle. That still feels absolutely right deep in my bones. But the moment itself, the delivery, the public declaration, the silence I left them sitting in. Was it too much? Or maybe not enough? I didn't do it to shame anyone. I did it because I couldn't keep pretending anymore. But there are nights I lie awake wondering, should I have waited? Should I have passed the envelope in private? Would that have softened the impact or just made it easier for them to rewrite the story? So what do you think? Did I do the right thing? Was I justified, or was there a better way to step away? Let me know in the comments. I'd truly love to hear what you would have done in my place. And if you want more true, honest stories like this about family, decisions, and standing your ground, don't forget to hit subscribe.